Yes, well, it wasn't that I liked puppets at the beginning. It was more that I knew somebody who was working with puppets, and I got together with him as a friend, and I was manufacturing puppets with him, and then I realized I was free if I would learn that from having to work for others or for other things. So I started learning to do puppets, and this friend left, and I stayed with the puppets, and and I loved the puppets because it put me in contact with people in the streets. I sold puppets, but I had to make a sketch for selling them, and there was a lot of magic about the puppets, and there was also something that I can see now how it was related to what I'm doing now, the possibility of people transcending their own images and seeing themselves as puppets,
Yes,
and
very
identifying
much,
with identifying with the puppet. And there was this moment of communion in the moment of the show in which we could all be enjoying the puppet show that I always loved so much, and that gave me freedom. I was almost 10 years doing puppets on the streets, and that gave me also the tranquility about really not dealing with the future too much. It was a very much thing of the moment. I didn't know how much money I would make, and some people asked me when I started giving satsangs, I was on donation basis, and people asked me, is it difficult for you to live with that? And I was always saying, no, it's not new. It's always been my life for years now, that I don't know what I'm going to have at the end of the month, or so that gave me the training, if you like, the street that I think taught me a lot.
So you went to satsang from a woman you was telling me about.
Yes.
And what actually happened to you? What drew you there, and what happened to you there?
Well, I was living in a small town out of Amsterdam, and I was the only one who had a car. So, and I had a friend who wanted to go to satsang, so he invited me so I could give him a lift. And there were three friends of mine, and we drove to Amsterdam every evening. It was a week-long event. And as I walked in the satsang and I heard the answers and the perspective from where they were coming, I knew exactly what it was meant. I immediately knew that I knew that place where she was talking from. And as we were driving home every day, I could see that the talks and the dialogues they were having, my friends, between each other, they were missing the point of the very meaning of the satsang. They were not integrating that with what they were talking about. And I could see the answers of what they were in conflict about, and they started teasing me in a way, but they also wanted to know, what would you say about this, and what would you say about that? And these friends were very knowledgeable. They studied Buddhism and Sufism, and I hadn't done anything by then. I just was amazed that what I thought was obvious wasn't obvious for them.
Mm.
And so yes, this happened, that we went back to satsangs, and coming back home there were more questions, and I was helping them to put it into context and see how they could actually dismantle the question by themselves.
So what did you feel had happened to you that hadn't happened to them? What did you know that had happened to you that hadn't happened to them?
Well, I felt a very deep confirmation that what I always felt was true. I never had a point of comparison. I never spoke about my inner experiences. I never saw something like satsang, an open event for talking about this subject. So I saw that what I felt, it was actually truth for someone else who had, yes, that experience and who was talking about it and helping others from that angle, from that perspective. So that confirmation brought confidence in me, and I could also see the way she was talking about identity and the path of self-enquiry. It really clarified the point of how it repeats itself, the image of oneself, and it really clarified the process of the mind, which is processed, I mean, constantly pushed to the extremes, if you like, in every sense, black or white. So I could see that clearly. And I could see that in my friends when they were talking, that they were not seeing the middle point.
So, you mentioned self-inquiry. Explain what you mean by self-inquiry.
Well, basically self-inquiry is to ask the question, who am I? Yes.
Okay.
To find out, as you probably know, who am I is vichara. But it has many different subtle forms as well. The more you know it, the more you practice it, the more subtle it becomes. Yes, is the turning of attention into itself in the shortest spasm possible. Yes, and that's the essence of self-inquiry, which brings self-knowledge. Yes. Is that answering your question? Yeah.
Yes, I'm just trying to find out more at that time of what had happened for you in terms of your true identity.
Yes.
What you realised. Then I know it's going back a long way and maybe you don't remember so clearly, but I'm just interested because, as you explained, this has all happened without necessarily an awareness of you realising it happened. It was a process or a happening that just happened, whereas other people were studying Buddhism or Sufism or whatever. For you, this was just naturally how things were.
Yes. I was also coming from a time in which I've been through intense suffering from a separation from my couple. I had a relationship. I was in a relationship that ended.
Right.
Not exactly then, but a few months, almost a year earlier. And that took me to a moment in which I had to be on my own. So I went to Brazil and I stayed in a beach with friends where I could have a little cabin, and I stayed on my own. And I took a lot of time for myself. And in those times, I confronted the panic that I had about being alone or losing that person. And I went all the way to the bottom line, and I saw that I was at ease inside of myself. So I'm just bringing it to context so you can imagine.
Yes,
When I
yeah.
go to satsang and I hear the identity process, I can identify immediately the identity, and I can start seeing other identities popping up as well. So it was like a glue that put everything together and clarified the process.
So you'd found a place which wasn't identified with you as a personality, as the normal ego human being type person. Is that what you're saying? You experienced a place that was beyond that somehow.